What AI doesn't teach our children is discernment, how to judge good and bad, right and wrong. It doesn't teach our children wisdom. It doesn't teach them moral values. It won't teach them how to develop self-control. Even though you have to watch what they're watching, and sometimes you might have to say, my kids have had to go through a lot of stuff. Living in Israel, going through war, having to be in bomb shelter, sexual identity issues and questions. And I've realized I can't get into their brain and make them react and understand things the way I want them to. And what I've seen God do over and over again, and it's always surprising to me.
Welcome to my channel, Garden Family. Can you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Yes, I'm happy to, and thank you for having me here. My name is Jeff Morgan. I am the host of the YouTube channel called So Be It. It is a project of Jews for Jesus. I serve in Israel, where I live with my wife and my 3 boys. And we love it here in Israel, although it's very challenging for the last couple of years here. A lot of things are going on in the world, but we see Jewish people coming to faith here in Israel, which is beautiful. We also see it around the world. And I just wanted to extend a beautiful thank you to the Korean Christian community for your support and your love for the work that we do here. We love you. And I hope to come to Korea someday and meet you and try your beautiful green tea.
Actually, I was so impressed by your content where you read Isaiah 53 to Jewish people on the street. I was just curious how they have responded.
Many ancient rabbis or sages, we would call them, would say that this passage is messianic, referring to the Messiah. But if you don't tell them where it's from and who it's talking about, they'll say it's from the New Testament and it's talking about Jesus. When you tell them it's from the Old Testament, they say, oh, it can't be Jesus. And that's just a wonderful thing to do when we read these passages to Israelis. So some of them are surprised and they think, wow, that's interesting. I never knew that. And others say, no, they just deny it right away.
I'm really curious. How did you become a follower of Christ?
That's a great question, because as a Jewish person growing up in a Jewish family with Jewish tradition, I never looked for Jesus. And so it was such a miracle that happened to me, because I wasn't looking for him specifically, but I was looking for help. I was looking for peace. And so growing up in this Jewish environment, not only did I have no exposure to Jesus and his teachings, I was told not to believe in him. And so when I went out into the world, I was very insecure. I was bullied a lot when I was in school. And so I wanted to prove how great and cool I was. But I didn't have peace and I didn't have God in my life. And so I went into New Age spirituality and the occult practices, mystical, secret practices. And because I did this, I found a little bit of peace in my life, but that was only because I pushed everybody out, pushed everything away, and found myself alone and isolated. Now, that was fun for a little while because I was away from all of those heavy influences that I had growing up with the rabbis and my parents. But the problem was my meditation practices and my mystical practices were leading me into a very dark, dark world where I was becoming arrogant, but also spiritually tormented. So over the course of about 20 years, I'm doing all these practices and I'm supposed to be peaceful and I'm supposed to be happy and successful, but I found myself depressed and anxious and fearful. And so I met my wife in the middle of all of this, and which was really great because she didn't really practice what I was doing. So it made me slow down a little bit. But after, 10 years of being married and having 2 children at the time, we now have 3, I found myself so spiritually tormented and depressed, and I couldn't figure out how to get out of it. My wife, she was thinking of leaving me. During this period of time, Jesus started to make himself known to me and my wife and my older son at the same time, but separately. We would all go out of the house and have experiences that were related to Jesus, and then we would come home and talk about them, and we were thinking, what's going on here? Who's Jesus? Why is this happening to us? And why am I starting to feel like I'm coming back to life? How is this possible? I never read the Old Testament. I never read the New Testament before. But I knew that Jesus was making himself known. I started to cry, but instead of tears of pain, they became tears of joy. And every time I would see a book about Jesus or talk to somebody about Jesus or a show on television about Jesus, I would start to weep. And one day I found myself getting on my knees and putting my hands up to the sky and saying, God, I don't know what you're doing, but thank you. I feel like I'm coming back to life. But that wasn't the time that I gave my life to Jesus. It was a couple weeks after that. I was invited to a church for the first time. I think I was in the front row. And the pastor was teaching on the transfiguration of Jesus, where Jesus goes up onto the mountain with his disciples, and Jesus is talking to Elijah and Moses. As a Jew, I'm thinking, well, here's Moses and Elijah. I've heard of those guys before, but what are they doing here on this side of the book? Because they came from our book. And what are they doing on the Christian book? It's really strange. And so the story goes where the disciples are there and they fall asleep, and they see, suddenly they wake up, they see Jesus talking to Elijah and Moses, and Peter starts to make 3 tents or tabernacles. And a voice comes out of the mountain, the cloud, and the voice says, "This is my beloved son, listen to him." And as soon as I heard that, Bruce, I knew that Jesus was the one. So I ran home and I told my wife, honey, it's Jesus. It's Jesus. I know he's the one. This is the truth that we've been looking for my whole life. And she told me of a very strange dream that she had the night before about me. And all these moments came together, and all of a sudden my depression and my fear, they fell off.
It's gone.
Completely gone. It was like the clothes that I'm wearing today. If I take off my shirt, I know that my shirt is off. I was wearing this pain for 20 years, and it was completely gone. And my hands flew up, and I said, I'm free. I am free. And I was freed completely, and I know exactly who did it. And so at that point, we dropped to our knees, and we gave our lives to Jesus. And the very next morning, Bruce, I was a completely different human being. I couldn't swear out of my mouth. I couldn't think lustful and evil thoughts. I was consuming the Bible for the first time in my life, and I was eating it and drinking it and reading it. I had so many idols, and I smashed them and I crushed them and I threw them in the garbage. And I was so angry at that.
What was the idols you smashed?
Symbols on my wall and self-help books and spiritual books from different Eastern teachers. I tore up the books, I ripped up the pictures, and I threw them all in the garbage. And not only that, I felt clean. I realized what a sinner I was and how evil I'd acted in my life. And so I repented, I gave my life to Jesus. And as a Jew, I thought, well, I have to make sense of this because I'm told not to believe in him. So I took the Bible very, very seriously. And for the last 8 years, I've been studying the Bible, the Old Testament and the New Testament. I've been studying Jewish literature. I've been studying Jewish history. I've been studying rabbinic commentary so that I can get a bigger picture of what's going on. And all that has strengthened my faith because I see the truth behind it. And it was only maybe a couple of weeks after I got saved that I read Isaiah 53. And when I read that, I ran over to my friend who was a Christian who helped lead me to Jesus. And I said, did you see Isaiah 53? He's like, yes, of course. And I said, oh, I've never seen it before. It's so amazing. I didn't know Jesus was in the Old Testament. That's when I decided to reach out to Jews for Jesus, and which is an amazing ministry of Jewish people that have come to faith just like me.
I don't know what to say.
Well, it's a miracle.
It is a miracle. It really is, Jeff.
Yeah,
Wow.
I can't explain it any other way. I knew who I was.
Wow.
And my wife knew who I was. And the very next day, I was a completely different person. And she saw it. And she told me, what I saw God do to you made me a believer in Jesus.
You made me speechless.
Well, God does that. It's never just a profession of faith verbally. It's a circumcision of your heart.
What you just said is really amazing, but you identify yourself as a Jew, right? In that context, as a Jewish parent, what do you emphasize in raising your children that might be different from non-Jewish parents?
Ethnically, I'm Jewish, I'm born Jewish. God still has a plan for the Jewish people. So it's important to make the distinction between Jew and Gentile, not because we're separate, we are one in Messiah, but because God has different purposes for Jew and Gentile, different purposes for male and female. So as a Jew, raising our kids Jewish, my faith in Jesus has made me feel even more connected to my Jewish roots. Because of that, I have more passion to learn about the Jewish feasts and holidays, such as Passover and the Feast of Tabernacles, which we call Sukkot, and the Shavuot, which is what we call in English the Pentecost. And I've found them so much more beautiful and rich, but also I've found the fulfillment of them in Jesus. And so raising Jewish kids, especially here in Israel, we still follow the Jewish practices. One practice that stands out a lot for us is the Sabbath, Shabbat. So every Friday night, we welcome the Shabbat as a family. And my wife's parents, they live next door. They're not believers, but we still gather together as Jews, as a Jewish family. And it is a departure from the weekly work that we do. So we work 6 days here in Israel, Sunday through Friday. And then Friday evening, we celebrate the Sabbath. We bring it in. And then Saturday is completely different. We rest. We worship God. We read from the Bible. We go to the beach. We enjoy ourselves and we remember what God has done for us. Because the original purpose of the Sabbath is to set a day aside for rest and to remember what God did for us. And so it's not to have all these different commands and you can't do this and you can't do that and you can't drive and you can't. It's about rest, setting a day aside, remembering what God has done and worshiping Him on that. As followers of Jesus, we understand that our faith as parents is not their faith. They have to come to that decision as well. But we provide them with that framework that incorporates Jewish tradition, biblical tradition as well. We teach them what it's about, show them the fulfillment in Jesus, and we pray for their salvation. And so far, my kids, at least my 17-year-old and my 14-year-old, they get it. So far, they get it, and they're believers so far right now. So we have to be very sensitive, not to force feed the Bible to our children, but to create it in ways that's enjoyable and helps them want to learn it. And sometimes just saying something, one little passage or one little biblical principle in the morning, just before they go off to school. Hey, kids, remember, I know it's tough at school sometimes, but remember, God is with you and He has a plan for your life, okay? So don't stress about it. And then you send them off. And sometimes that's better than sitting with them for 30 minutes reading the Bible. And we just pray to God that He has them in His hand and that we don't take all of the responsibility for their faith upon our own shoulders. We just deliver the message. You have to trust God with your children. Otherwise, you're going to control them so much that they're going to resist you.
Do you have some insight regarding Havrutta or talking, listening, debating in that sense?
I love how you use the word Havrutta. That's really cool. Once your kids get old enough to be able to dialogue and converse and discuss ideas, it's really, really important to teach them apologetics, to teach them how to defend their faith, to teach them the logic that's found in the Bible so that when their friends come to them and say, oh, we came from apes and the world was created with a big bang and science explains everything, then your children should be able to have an answer with that instead of, no, God did it. They should have an ability to defend their faith. Once your children's faith becomes known around school and other people, the other kids are going to go tell their parents, and then the atheist parents are going to tell their kids what to say, and then the atheist kids are going to come to school and tell your kids that they're foolish and that God doesn't exist. And what we do is we have these discussions back and forth with the kids, and we give them the answers that are biblical, that are scientific, that are logical, that says that, okay, well, evolution may happen on a micro level, but there is absolutely no evidence of one species changing into a completely different species. There's no evidence of that. That's faith. And make them understand that the whole concept of evolution, that God doesn't exist, is just as big of a leap of faith as what they would consider our faith. You have a lot of faith to believe that without all of the surrounding evidence that you can't test, see, or find. So this idea of discussing ideas back and forth with the children is very, very important. And start young. And it'll give them confidence that you learn as an adult, you want to pass down to your children. It's not all about delivering biblical passages. It's about delivering biblical logic. God is extremely logical. He's put prophecies that have been fulfilled in the Bible. There are scientific facts in the Bible. I think it was even through the 1800s that people were still thinking the earth was flat. But the Bible talks about it being a sphere hanging on nothing. The concept is that, the Bible is all fake, it's all made up, it's all mythology, it's all myth. But it's like, no, there's a lot of scientific evidence in the Bible, even about running water, what you should be using for cleansing and purifying. There have been countless deaths in the world where doctors, before they knew this fact, were using still water to wash their hands before they delivered babies, and they were passing on all kinds of diseases to different women, and the women were dying, kids were dying. Then they discovered that you need running water to cleanse your hands before you go on to the next person. And this is already in the Bible, this, purification laws.
Hi, Jeff. As a parent, what do you think are the most essential skills children need in the age of AI?
Just this year, my middle son, he was given a tablet, a big tablet, for school instead of all the books. This is the first time I've seen this. No more books, only the tablet. And so, first of all, the kids have to become technologically capable. They have to learn. There was a time where we didn't have paper and pencils. And then those things came, and we learned. And then came typewriters, and then came computers. So as an evolving society, we don't try to resist the evolution of these things. We try to embrace them and use them for the good. So AI, I believe, can be used as a wonderful tool if you know how to use it. And I think that children, obviously they have to be monitored by their parents. What are they watching? How much time are they spending on their devices? What are they using this technology for? Obviously, a certain amount of monitoring has to take place. But I believe that the data that we can get through AI can really teach us a lot about how to learn more efficiently, how to gather information. All these things are good. But what AI doesn't teach our children is discernment, how to judge good and bad, right and wrong. It doesn't teach our children wisdom. It doesn't teach them moral values. It doesn't teach our kids basic skills that will help them in their relationships, in marriage, in their walk with God. It won't teach them how to develop self-control. So that's our role as parents. So do not ever rely on the internet to raise your children. Even though you have to watch what they're watching, and sometimes you might have to say, that's probably not great for you. And at a certain age, they're just going to say, well, I want to watch it anyway. And they're going to do that when they get old enough. And in those cases, you just have to say, okay, I understand that, but I just want you to understand the difference between what you're watching and God's plan for the world and for your life. As long as you can differentiate between the two, which is discernment, okay? That's discernment. AI doesn't teach you that. What I like to say sometimes to our kids is, can you spot the lie? Try to find the lie in this program. In this program that has monsters running around and things killing each other and demons and this, try to find the lie. What's the lie? And sometimes they'll be really creative. The lie here is that being part of the evil side can be good too sometimes. That's the lie, right? And so we're like, that's great. As long as you can discern between these two things, I can't stop you from watching everything. But as long as you stay away from specific things like pornography, because it will destroy your mind. The most important thing is we teach our kids to ask questions. If we don't have an answer, find it in Scripture. Sometimes parents will do this. Instead of teaching them to know the difference between right and wrong, they'll just say you can't do any of the wrong. You only do the right, and that way you'll be okay. But that's not the way that the world works. It's not the way our minds, the kids work. There's temptation in the world. The kids want to feel like they have some ability to choose. And we have to be able to trust God with them. If you hold on to them so tightly, they're going to break away not only from God, but from you as well. And so we want to give them a little bit of freedom, a little bit of privacy, and the ability to distinguish the difference between right and wrong. And you pray for them and you give them to God. And that way you can breathe. My kids have had to go through a lot of stuff. Living in Israel, going through war, having to be in bomb shelter, sexual identity issues and questions. And I've realized I can't get into their brain and make them react and understand things the way I want them to. I have to trust God with them. And what I've seen God do over and over again, and it's always surprising to me, is build my children's faith even when I feel like I'm not doing a good job.
If we could share just one Bible verse that comes to mind with Christian parents in Korea, what would it be?
If there's one verse that I could share with Christian parents in Korea, it would be from Deuteronomy chapter 6 and verse 7. And what this says is, "These words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and talk of them when you sit down in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise." This verse goes through my mind almost every day. Did I talk about God with my kids today? And if I didn't, I make a point to do it, even if it's just one sentence. And so Deuteronomy chapter 6 and verse 7, God gives his commandments. And he wants us to talk to our children about these commandments, even if you just do something small every day. Talk to your kids about God every day so that they know he's real. When they get older, they can always say, wow, my parents never one day did they ever not talk to me about God. And I thank them for that. You can give that to your children as a gift. So I recommend that verse, and it really helps with parenting.
Thank you so much for your time, Jeff.
You're welcome, Bruce. God bless you, brother. Take care.
Yeah, God bless you. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye-bye.